Welcome to Audible Insights, brought to you by the Insights Association and hosted by David Paul, founder of Dialsmith and Lillian Labs.
Welcome to this episode of the Audible Insights podcast. We're coming to you live from the floor of the Insights Association's Corporate Researchers Conference in Orlando. I have the pleasure of being joined by Renata Policicio, Vice President of Research and Insights for ESPN, focusing on global markets. Renata, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Could you please tell us a little bit about your role at ESPN and what type of work you do day to day?
Absolutely. So me and my team, we focus on what we call global markets. So everything from our global brand, we are the global stewards of the ESPN brand. So a lot of our time is spent on brand tracking and brand work, but a lot of our time is also invested in how we create the best content across different markets and the best experience for our fans.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. I'm sure no day is boring for you, right?
No day is boring. I'm talking with India in the morning, and then with Latin America in the afternoon, and I may end with Australia. So yeah, never a boring day.
Sounds really fun. I know you're based in New York. Where are you from originally?
I'm from Brazil originally, but yes, I'm based in New York.
Whereabouts in Brazil?
São Paulo, that huge city.
I've been there once. I actually did some work in a former life. My company actually did some work with X Games on sports scoring, and we also worked for Street League skateboarding.
Nice.
And the first year that X Games went international, the first market they went to was Sao Paulo.
Yep.
And we
Brazil.
set up, and I worked on the street skating team doing scoring in Sao Paulo.
That sounds awesome.
So that wasn't boring either. So you're here speaking at CRC. What's the topic of your talk today?
It's storytelling. It's really how to identify and create more impactful sports stories. So I'll talk a little bit to the audience this afternoon about how we were able to measure what good stories are made of, especially in the sports world.
So tell me about, in your opinion then, what are some of the elements that make effective and compelling stories in the sports world?
I'll start with the number one. I always say that if there's one thing that I want people to leave the room with after the presentation is the importance of being relatable. So relatability is essential in every story that you tell, and that's not specific to sports. It's absolutely across the board. So relatability is by far the number one. But we found that there are 4 other qualities that also complement depending on the goal that you have with that story. So I'll give you some examples. Humor. We learned that sports are a very intense experience for fans. Sometimes they're even stressed out when watching a game. So humor will bring that release of that stress and that intensity. So when humor is genuine and authentic, it really adds to the story. Substance. We found that especially in the sports world, to give context to what's happening or about to happen, help fans understand and engage more. There is a quote that I love from a fan that says, "The more I know about it, the more I want to watch." And it's exactly what substance is. If you don't understand what's going on or the rules of the game, you don't engage as much. Being provocative is also important. Being fresh, but more than that, making fans feel really join an emotion from fans is also very important in stories.
Is your focus on storytelling for ESPN more on the original content side, more on the sports casting side and how sportscasters can bring fans into the experience, or is it both?
That's a very, very good question. We say at ESPN that everything tells a story. So from a during or post-game broadcasting to our long format like 30 for 30, we say that everything tells a story. And we really believe that the insights that we found with this study apply for both more classical storytelling, films and long formats, but also to broadcasting a game or having a debate. It's really those 5 qualities that we should have in mind with everything that we do.
Yeah. And what are some of the research methods that you generally deploy in order to get those insights around storytelling and content?
That was a challenging one because a lot of our content team really already does great storytelling. So they know about it. They know how to do it. But the real challenge was to quantify and create a framework that was actionable. So something that they really could use every time they're thinking or planning a new story. So we started with qualitative. So we talked to experts inside and outside ESPN. We talked to fans on discussion groups, and we send them homework for a week. So we had diaries with almost 60 fans here in the US, and they watched pieces of content every day and answered a couple of questions after that. So more on the qual side. And then the big challenge was, how do we quantify everything that we heard in the qual? So we realized after the qual that there were 18 main attributes that, according to fans, described the best stories, the best sports stories. So we created a survey of 1,200 respondents in the US, where we showed them 60 videos that represented all the sports that we wanted to measure, but more than that, the 18 attributes and the 4 KPIs that we wanted to measure.
Just a simple
sounds
little
complex.
study, right?
And after that, with all that huge amount of data, we ran a regression model to understand what attribute explained how a story is perceived. And the 4 KPIs that we had were pure entertainment value, so how entertaining that story is, brand affinity, so how much it drives brand equity, league affinity, so how much of a brand affinity drives to the league or to the sport that is being portrayed in that story, and finally recommendation, so how likely are you to recommend and share that story. And really the best way to do it was just select videos and ask people to rate those videos according to the attributes and KPIs. Because it's very hard to just ask people about stories. It's very hard for them to explain and especially to quantify. So we spent a reasonable amount of time selecting the 60 videos that really represented what we wanted to hear from fans.
Yeah, with such a library of potential content to choose from, I'm sure getting down to that 60 was not easy.
It was 2 weeks of hard work, but it really was the key and the heart of the study. If we didn't select the right ones,
absolutely. Well, that's all great. So before I let you go, what would be one key takeaway that you would like listeners to be more mindful of when they go back to their work, either in a corporate research department or as an agency that supports corporations and researchers, related to you and what you do? What's one thing you really would like to encourage people to pay a little bit more attention to and give full focus to?
I'll mention 2. One I already mentioned, but I'll mention it again, is the power of being relatable in everything that you do, from every piece of content that you produce or any advertising campaign that you think about, the power of being relatable to create a personal connection to your fans or consumers. And the second one is that stories are different depending on what you want to drive. So if you want to drive brand affinity, you can play with some qualities. If you want to drive recommendation, you should maybe think about different qualities. So when creating a story, again, an ad campaign or a piece of content, you need to be relatable, but also think about what you want to drive with that story. What is your objective with that story?
Right. So storytelling overall is not a one-size-fits-all.
No, and it should not be. It should not be. I think every content creator should think about what I want to drive with that piece of content and that story.
And work backwards. Yeah.
Yep.
Wonderful. Well, Renata, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights. Good luck with your presentation today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. You can find all our episodes by searching Audible Insights on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, and by visiting insightsassociation.org/audible. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next time.